The biggest thing holding the BMW G87 M2 back when you're trying to drive faster on track is understeer. In this video, we're going to show you why this is, and more importantly, how you get rid of it. Today we are at Donington Park with our BMW G87 M2. We're taking this car from a stock road car all the way up to a full track car. If you're new to the series, we take cars like this BMW M2 and every week we install a new upgrade, we take it to track and then we see what a difference that upgrade makes in isolation. Our M2 is still basically in stock form. All we've done to date is give it a full fast road geometry alignment to make it more stable out on track and on the roads as well. Today we're going to be installing our first upgrade to the car, focusing on getting rid of the heavy understeer that it comes with out the factory. This should make it much better to drive out on track, not only from a driver perspective and confidence, it's also going to reduce lap time as well. So we're looking forward to seeing how much faster the car is on track today, but more importantly, if we can get rid of that understeer and get the tyre working much better. So before we get started with any upgrades, we're going to get Chris, our professional racing driver, out on track right now. He's going to get some baseline data, some baseline laps, which we'll take a look at in a second and see exactly how the car is right now today. Once again, we have Chris Diamond in the driving seat of the M2, so we can get a base lap for the car before we fit our camber plates. So this is actually the national layout, so it doesn't have the Melbourne loop on this layout of Donington, so it's just the national track, so it's a bit of a shorter circuit this time. So Chris Diamond's a professional racing driver. We're using him so that we can get a really consistent base lap, and then when we fit the camber plates, we can overlay directly with this data on the same day, with the same weather, same conditions, and see exactly what the difference the camber plates have made to the car, because we know that the driver in the driving seat is extremely consistent, so the differences aren't going to be due to his driving style, they are going to be due to the parts that we fitted. So straight away we can see they're the same as last time we were here at Donington in the last video. We're seeing exactly the same behaviour from the car. It's got the understeer as we're going through the corners, and again the way it applies the understeer to the tyre is it lights up the outside edge of the tyre in bright red, and then as the understeer kicks in, it then flashes the whole tyre to red as it scrubs through the compound and basically makes the entire tyre go completely red as it understeers on the corner exit. So we're seeing exactly the same behaviour as before, so nothing really changed there. So this is a really nice baseline lap that we can use so that when we fit the camber plates we can overlay the difference and see if it has made any difference to how we're actually using the tyre. So again, the rear tyres, exactly the same as before, aren't really getting worked very hard, so they're staying at the much cooler end of the scale. So they're getting just into the greens, but we're not getting to bright green and yellow. It is just staying really quite cool at the back as the nose is being pushed around the circuit. So we can see from the onboard there that we are still getting a lot of understeer at the front axle. So understeer is when you turn the steering wheels and the front of the car doesn't actually change direction, it just keeps on pushing on forwards. So the only way to regain control of the car at that point is to lift off the throttle, let the car slow down, the front tyre re-grip, and then it will get the nose back under control, which if you're trying to drive the car fast, that is so counterintuitive because you're always having to back off the throttle to let the nose come back. So you're constantly slowing the car down just so the car doesn't understeer. So understeer is a real enemy of lap time. So we've got the front wheel off the car here, so we can show you a little bit as to what actually causes that understeer when we're out on track. So this is the front wheel off the car. So if we say this is the front left wheel, for example, because most of the corners here at Donington Park are right-handers, so we can actually see on the tyre itself that the outside edges have worn significantly more than the inside edges, which sort of verifies what we saw on the data with the outside edges getting really hot first, like bright red, and that is where the tyre is just getting stripped away. When that tyre starts to get stripped, that is where the understeer comes in, and the tyre starts to slip and cause the front just to push forwards regardless of the steering angle. The reason for this is the car as standard does not have enough static camber. So camber is where the top of the wheel is leaning in more than the bottom of the wheel. This is called negative camber. So with the car not having enough negative camber as standard, what's happening as we're going around the corner is we've got the wheel just a tiny bit lent in for a small amount of negative that the car has as standard, and then we're going into the corner, and as we start to load the tyre up and the car starts to lean over to the left hand side as we turn right, we're actually leaning back off the tyre again, and this is what we can see on the data. When the outside edge of that tyre is turning red, this is what is happening. The car is physically leaning back off the inside edge of the tyre onto the outside edge of the tyre, and that reduces our grip significantly because only a small portion of the tyre is now actually in contact with the ground. So what we want to try and achieve is, as we're going through that corner, we want to start with more negative camber so that as we enter the corner, we lean onto that tyre contact patch, so through the corner we get all of the tyre working for maximum grip, and as we exit the corner we lean back off that tyre as we need it less in a straight line. This basically means that we can reduce understeer significantly because we're using all of the tyre through the corner. So that is the goal that we're trying to achieve, is to get to a point where the negative camber is set to such a position that the average amount of tyre usage through the corner is as much of its full width as possible. This is going to significantly reduce our understeer, maximise our grip, and therefore it's going to bring our lap times down because we don't have to constantly lift off the throttle to let the front come back. We're going to have a lot more front axle grip, which means we can carry more speed through the corner with a lot more confidence as well. So in order to actually eliminate the understeer on the front of the BMW, we have a problem. So as standard, the top of the shock absorber is not adjustable, so you can't actually adjust the camber like we could on the Porsche GT4, for example, where the top mount had slots, so we could actually slide a bit more camber into the chassis. The front of the BMW, however, has a top mount that looks just like this. This is off the other side, and it has no adjustment whatsoever. It is bolted to the car, it's even locked in place with these pins, so there is absolutely no movement at the top of this shock to give any camber adjustment whatsoever. There's also no eccentric bolts at the lower end of the system, so we cannot adjust camber to eliminate the understeer to get the tyre working like we'd like to. So in that case, you need to install an adjustable camber plate to the top of the shock, which will allow for camber adjustment. So this is our camber plate that we design and manufacture all in-house, and we're going to be fitting these today to get more camber on the front axle and eliminate the understeer. 4 camber plates for the G87 M2. There are a few different options on the market that you can get. We're going to be fitting ours today that we design and manufacture all in-house, and there's 3 really cool features that make ours a little bit different as well. One is that we use toothed slots here. So our camber adjustment means that it's locked in place once set. This means that when we're running curbs out on track or just driving the car on the road with potholes and lumps and bumps, we know for a fact that the camber isn't going to slip and move. So this gives us a lot of confidence in the car that when we set that camber setting, it's locked in place and it can't slip and move when we're driving the car, which can be quite dangerous if it slips because your toe angle changes and it can get very nervous and unsettling on the front axle. So with ours locked in place, none of that needs to be a worry at all. Our camber plates also have a massive spherical bearing mounted into them. So this bearing is so big that it doesn't make any additional noise. We've selected these bearings over a number of years before we got the perfect bearing over a long period of time. So these bearings, when they're fitted, they actually improve damper performance because when the damper is moving, there's actually no play in the original rubber bush, whereas before, the rubber bush in the top mount would actually flex before the damper was activated when the shock compresses. With our bearings fitted, the shock force is immediately activated when the chassis tries to move or the wheel goes up or down in the wheel well. This gives better damper performance as well, so it's well worth having a solid bearing in the top mount. There's often associated knocking noises and loud noises and NVH increase when you have a solid bearing, but ours don't knock and they don't give that added NVH to the car either. They're also included in our lifetime warranty, so if they ever were to knock or make a noise, we would just replace them, no matter how you use the car as well. Finally, the third aspect that we've designed into these camber plates is additional caster. So we've actually machined an offset position on the top of this camber plate, which is an offset caster position. So this is going to increase our caster at the front axle to get more steering feel and more steering feedback. But what we're also going to get is dynamic camber gain. This is something we talk about quite a lot because it's a really cool aspect to have, particularly in a rear-wheel drive car, because it means that we can effectively run less negative camber in a straight line, so we get better braking traction, but then as we turn the steering wheels, the caster gives more camber as the wheel is physically turning. So this means that we get the best of both worlds. We have to run a little bit less negative in a straight line, so we get better braking traction overall. And then through the corner, the caster is giving us the extra camber that we need in the corner to lean onto to again increase that grip, and in this case, reduce the understeer significantly. So a really nice little feature just to package into the wheel well. And the other thing is, it's already machined into the part, so you don't even need a caster gauge to set this. Just literally bolt it up to the chassis and a caster increase is done. So really nice little upgrade that we're going to get fitted now. So we're hoping to see big improvements on the tyre temp sensors, and also we'll get the feedback from Chris of how the car is physically driving out there as well. So we're going to get this side fitted up now, so they're both installed, and then we're going to get it on and get it aligned. With the camber plates installed, we now have to give the car a full geometry alignment because by changing the camber, it has also affected the toe angle. So we've reset the front toe setting with our string alignment kit on our Motorsport flat patch just now. And we've also increased the rear camber. Now that we've got so much more camber on the front, we've had to slightly increase the rear camber to what we can get as standard so we can get a better balance out of the chassis. The only issue is on the back of this car, we are limited to the toe and camber settings due to the toe adjuster having a very limited range of adjustment. So we've got as much as we can right now out of the car at the back, and on the front we've gone to the middle setting on the camber plate, which is around negative 2.5 degrees. It does vary based on ride height. We are at stock ride height as well, but it does change very slightly depending on the ride height of the car as well. So we've got that locked in place on the front axle. We've got the whole car reset up, so we're going to head back out on track and see what a difference that has made to the tyre and the understeer. So now we've got the camber plates installed to the car. Chris is heading back out on track under the same conditions and on the same tyres as well. So straight away off the bat, we can see on the right hand screen there with the camber plates now fitted that the front tyres are already working in a much cooler window. So they're still staying up in the greens and the yellows, but on the whole, they are not flashing red constantly as we go around the track. Also, his cornering speeds through corners like Craner Curves and the old hairpin is actually up around 5 miles an hour on average more, and I think the peak was actually 7 miles an hour faster through one of the faster section corners. So a really huge improvement on cornering speed, and that's just simply because he's now able to carry the speed of the car through the corner without it then understeering. So we're getting a lot more grip from the car as a whole. What's really nice to see though is if we take a little look at the rear tyre temperature sensors. So now you can see that we're actually getting a lot more heat into the rear tyre compound. So whereas before the rear tyres were staying in the blues, the light greens, we're now actually pushing into the bright greens, the yellows, and also through some of the corners they're flashing into red as we're actually introducing a little bit of oversteering to the chassis because the front tyres are so locked down into the tarmac now. So we've almost removed the understeer to such a point that we're now forcing the rear tyres to do the work. The reason they weren't working beforehand is because the front was just washing through the corner like we can see here on turn 1. The outside edge was just flashing to red, the car was understeering off the circuit, and the rear tyres were just rolling along, pushing the front around. Whereas now that the front has so much more mechanical grip, because we're actually using the full width of that tyre now, and we're in a much more comfortable operating window in terms of temperatures. So now that we've achieved that, and we're carrying a lot more speed through the corner, the rear tyres aren't just wandering around the track, they're actually being lent on and they're being worked because we're carrying so much more speed through the corner. There's a lot more grip going into that tyre, and we're actually asking those rear tyres to work a lot harder. We've also slightly changed the balance of the car now, where it's gone from extremely understeer heavy. We've actually shifted that to a more sort of neutral to oversteer bias with this current setup. So you can see their corner exit, both rear tyres actually lit up very slightly on corner exit as Chris got back on the gas. And this is because he's now carrying speed through the corner, and whereas before he was lifting off the throttle to let the front come back, he's actually holding throttle through the corners now, keeping the average speed up entirely through the corner, and then he's straight back on the gas at corner exit. And this is actually starting to shock the rear tyres a little bit because they're there and they're ready to have the gas applied, whereas before when he was lifting off the gas to recover from the understeer, he was having to actually wait for the front to recover, then he was applying the gas back on and having to build back through the revs, whereas now he's much higher up in the revs in gear and he's sort of in the torque curve of that gear on corner exit, causing those rears to light. So yeah, we're actually working the rears a little bit harder than we expected to see, and this is why these sensors are so nice to have fit to the car, because they show us exactly how the car reacts and behaves based on that change. So really nice to see that we've got the front tyres locked down into the ground, and again the distribution of those tyres through the corner is a much nicer distribution. So we've just had a quick look there through the side-by-side of the data, so before the plates fitted and after they were fitted. So we know that the tyre is now obviously much more operational on the front. We're using all of the tyre on the front end. The rears were definitely starting to get a lot hotter than they were before because they're actually being put to work now.
You can feel that, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess now that they're in there, has the understeer been removed or reduced, and how does it feel to drive?
yeah, we've made a massive step forward in reducing that understeer. There is still a bit, but I think actually that's more just the limit of the tyre rather than the chassis itself. So all the way down through Craner now, I really feel confident to drive the car all the way through those rights until I get to the left. I'm having a much softer brake to get the car into the left. But what I can feel now is that, yeah, we need to catch the back up with the front. I'm getting a little bit of, just on that initial turn, the back wanting to rotate a bit too much. And also just when it loads up through the old hairpin, just you can feel that want of camber where it just has a little snap on exit. I'm just feeding the throttle in a little bit slower than I would do normally. But in terms of balance, we've definitely made a big improvement. We're traveling nearly 4 or 5 miles an hour quicker down through Craner than we were this morning on a tyre that is now more worn. So we've made a big step forward that way, and coppice as well. I can really take the car in with confidence. Just a little float from the back to help it rotate as it comes over, which, you know, we can settle.
Is that as it comes over the crest?
Just as it comes over the crest. So I'm a little bit greedy with the brake, and I've got a bit too much rake in her. She'll just go a bit too much, but if I'm a bit nicer and bleed off slightly more, it will just give me that right amount so I can set it and get a really good run down the back straight.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, this morning we had a lot of front limiting behaviour. So, like, you were turning in, you can see it on the video and on the tyre sensors, like, it was just scrubbing basically on every corner. Whereas now it definitely looks more locked in on the front. But like you said, I could see on the, especially on the tyre sensor for the rear, before they were like green, blue in terms of colour, and they were just along for the ride because the nose was just pushing along. The rears were never actually doing any work.
Yeah, almost like a front-wheel drive car. They're just holding the rear, the exhaust off.
It's just rolling along for the drive, holding the exhaust off. But yeah, I mean, now it looks like they're actually being put to work. Even in the braking zones, you can see that they're flashing into red because they're holding latent heat now. So then they're actually working a lot harder. So we did increase the camber at the back, sort of, because we knew we'd need a bit more to match the front. But we can't get more as is right now because we'll run out of toe adjustment. So yeah, it's good to see that there is a next step as well to get the neutral balance. But I think when we do that, the overall level of that car is going to be so much higher than before. Yeah,
and I think it will give the everyday user a real big, you know, we've got a big step forward in confidence and usability now, but when you're really pushing it and maybe you're slightly, you know, you do a few more track days than the average bear, shall we say, you can really lean on the car and just have that confidence to, even from the off, on colder tyres, get on it and go quickly and really get into the session before you have to start waiting for tyre temp or anything like that. It'll bring the balance to a real sweet spot, and it will be a very, very nice car to drive.
Awesome, okay. So the camber plate's being sort of an upgrade. You're a pro driver and you've just been hammering this thing around track. I mean, your braking point is ridiculous. I don't think I'm that brave to break that late.
Taking some time out of people there.
Yeah, just a little bit. But I think from a novice point of view, do you think the camber plate is a good upgrade to sort of give them a better platform to work from, or would they not feel that difference being a novice driver?
No, you feel it straight away. Out even on the cold tyres where we went out and having just changed the car, it was night and day difference. I really felt I could take the car down the hill, and it gave communication to the front. So that broad span of driving is now much, much more, whereas before it was almost a little bit narrow, particularly on the stock setup that we had when we first got the car. It was very, very narrow. If you weren't exactly right off the brake or exactly right on the power, she was going to snap and it was very sudden. Now there's a build, and we build and you can feel it, so it gives you that confidence to just lean on it a little bit more, next lap a little bit more, and incrementally build your speed up so you can go faster and be safe.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think one way I describe it is it's basically giving a driver a bit of a comfort blanket. If you go into a corner too fast, just based on lack of experience or whatever, I've done it a few times, it's nice to have the camber there to lean onto and get the front end in and like just back off, you know, just let the car coast round and slow down, but you've not gone off. You've got the grip in the tyre to help you around the corner in that scenario.
If you do make a mistake, and as a novice everyone's going to, it's got that security buffer around it where it's not going to do anything silly, it's not going to do anything sudden anymore. We've sorted that, but it will give you that support to get around. And if there is a situation where you just need to get off the pedals and just turn it around the corner, it will track you around and you will, save Jonathan some gravel.
Awesome. I mean, I might even sign on, just have a lap in this, because I'm really excited to feel this difference, because I said I wouldn't drive this again until this upgrade was done on track, because it was that worrying last time. I was like just understeering everywhere. I hated it.
It was interesting going down the hill the first day we had it, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, no, I'm actually excited to jump in and see what that difference feels like. So yeah, awesome. Great. Thank you very much as always. So it's coming to the end of the day here at Donington, and we're really happy with the results that we've seen from the camber plate installation. The understeer has been heavily reduced. We're now using that tyre across its full width, and we're no longer massively overheating the outside edge of the tyre. In fact, the whole of the front tyre has come down in temperature because we're distributing that load through the entire width of the tyre through the corner. So really cool to see the amount of grip that is generated from the front end. That does now mean that we're overworking the rear very slightly, and we have that set to as much rear camber as we can get. In terms of the front camber today as well, we set those camber plates to the middle setting, so there is even more camber available out of the camber plate, but right now we don't need more because we've set that camber to match the tyre we're using, a Pirelli P0, so ultimately a road tyre, and we are still on the stock spring and shock, so it's still very high and also quite soft. That means that the chassis is still wallowing around a little bit inside the wheelbase, which means we don't need more camber because we're not leaning onto the tyre as aggressively as we would if we have the car lower and stiffer. So there's more to get in the future, which we're really excited to do, but for right now, that is the perfect camber setting for this setup. As we can see on the sensors, the tyre was now very, very happy. At the back, we've got as much camber as we can get as standard, but the rear toe is limited. So the toe adjuster is quite small on these cars. So it means that we start struggling to get the toe in past a certain point of camber. So in the next episode, we're going to be shifting our focus now, finally, to the rear end because we're so happy with the grip at the front. So we're going to be looking at the rear end. We're going to be installing a new upgrade at the back to allow us to get more adjustability and stability at the rear end and raise the whole level of the car out on track. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next step with our G87 M2 build.